Good morning, everyone. This is fantastic. Congratulations to the entire climate change team of YI. I think we know we've always read about the impact of climate change, but we have at times a lot of questions how to go about it. And I'm so proud that Piyush, Madhna, and the team have led with a great vision of transforming things on ground. And today, I can say 57 chapters, more than 50,000 UA members, more than 5 lakh Thalir students are working on ground during this week to create a larger impact, which we want to see and how it can impact our world. So I see the journey of climate change in last 1.5 years at YI. I think this team has come together. We had a vision, and I think at YI, when we work on a vision to impact a larger cause, I think it's beautiful when everyone comes around. Uh, when you look at Maiwaki Forest, and we've been told it's one of the most toughest way of building a forest. It's what is that impact? People don't assess it. But if I look at now background, the kind of growth at which they are growing right now, the kind of carbon emissions that we are achieving right now, I think the results speak louder when you think, what have you done? So with that, Piyush, I think this one tree, one person, I think Yuva across the nation is going to start working on it. And I think that will change the way we've been looking impact on ground. When I saw COP26 or been reading about COP27 with the way the world is moving right now, and they are so focused, the kind of money which is coming in, the kind of technologies coming in, and the kind of innovation through technology has changed the way the production happens, changed the way the automobile industry is operating, changed the way the startup industry is operating. I think we are looking at a vast change right now. And together, if we work on this, I'm sure we have a long way to go, but I'm sure we have a lot of success to achieve on. With that, may I can see we have both the speakers is Pratap as well joined. So, Piyush, if you okay, can we just begin the session?
Yes, Shrinjay, Pratap and Pauline both are there. We can go ahead with the session.
All right. Thank you so much, Piyush. Good morning, Mr. Pratap. Good morning, Ms. Pauline. Welcome.
Good morning. Happy to be here.
Hi, good morning.
Great. So before we move ahead, let me just quickly introduce our both speakers for today. I'll try to introduce in my best way, Pratap, and I hope I do it well. So guys, to all of you, Mr. Pratap Raju is the founding partner at Climate Collective. And the kind of work he has put in, it's phenomenal. And I think it's an honor to have you, sir, with us, because the kind of history that you have and the kind of work you do on ground is terrific. Mr. Pratap Raju has been in the climate and clean tech space since 2009, from being one of the pioneers in solar in the early days of National Solar Mission. He has pivoted to supporting climate and clean tech startups throughout South Asia, where the Climate Collective has where the Climate Collective has accelerated over 600 plus clean tech startups across the region. A graduate from Harvard and then Oxford University, Pratap Raju has been an entrepreneur for the past 20 years in IT, media, renewable energy, and now climate change. About the Climate Collective network that is part of. The Climate Collective is a non-profit focused on unleashing the innovation and entrepreneurial talents of people in South Asia. The main goal of Climate Collective is to build and support emerging innovation ecosystem about climate and sustainability through a variety of startups, tools, and programs. For this, the collective is building local climate entrepreneurship ecosystem throughout Asia. Wow, this is going to be a phenomenal topic and a phenomenal background, sir. It's an honor to have you with us. Are you there with us?
Yes. Great. Thank you very much.
It's an honor.
I just want to check.
Sorry. Are you able to
So
hear
make
us?
sure my connection is strong, otherwise I'll switch.
Okay.
I am. It's a little jerky, but I think.
Okay. We'll just while you check that, let me also now come to our other speaker. I think Ms. Pauline Laravoire. I thank you so much for being with us, and your country is beautiful, by the way. She is the Sustainability Director, Techno India Group, co-founder and CEO Y East. Pauline comes from Paris and has lived in Kolkata for the past 4 years. She holds a master's degree in sustainability and social innovation from HEC Paris and has developed her expertise in strategy consulting, social entrepreneurship, impact assessment, and community building over the years. Pauline is associated with educational conglomerate Techno India Group as Sustainability Director and also co-founder Eastern India focused SDG focused network based venture Y East just after she moved to India. Overall, Pauline has developed a passion for building communities of organizations and curating educational resources towards sustainability, especially through community-based ventures, Y East, Youth for Sustainability India Alliance, and Learning Planet. It's an honor to have you, Pauline, with us.
Thank you, Shrinjay.
I think before we request you to have your opening remarks, let me share with our audience here. When we are talking about this session is about youth and climate change. And I think it has never been so important to bring this topic up front. Why we have two set of speakers right in front of you. One will be, one has a deeper knowledge. Not both of them are great knowledge, but I think someone is focused on technology, innovation, and startup, bringing the world together. While Paul has been working more on the education as well as changing the way people think. So we have a great set of speakers with us and a lot to share. They have curated a lot of, for us. So with that, I would request Mr. Pratap, if you could please have your opening remarks for youth and climate change, if you could please.
Great. Thank you, Shrinjay. It's always a pleasure to talk to people who are interested in climate. It sounds kind of funny, but when I started 2016, most people were more discouraging, at least in the startup ecosystem. There are very few people in India with a climate or climate tech startup. We estimate about 100, and now it's exploded. When I hired someone on my team in 2018, who's now a partner with us, Joshi, she had finished her master's in climate change in TIS, and she did not know how to find a sustainability job. Now, she is from a master's in climate change, and they themselves didn't have great placement positions, officers, or bridges to corporate or nonprofit world for sustainability. In fact, most of those in that degree joined something else despite their interest in climate. I think what's happened in a short amount of time is an explosion of interest in climate. I'll just share just a very 3 or 4 slides on who we are as well. We are a nonprofit. When we started, it was just a hackathon in 2016. By the end of this financial year, we will have passed 1,000 climate tech startups and 58 accelerators. And this is absolutely amazing. None of us knew this would happen in the ecosystem, much less ourselves. And it's only increasing because climate is one of those transformational trends that could not just change, for example, introduce a few technologies that could transform industry, transform how we consume, how we even design our cities, and maybe even our lives as well. A little bit about us. We have built out a nice little set of platforms to support entrepreneurs. We estimate now about 2,500 climate tech startups in India, which is a 25 times fold in 6 years. So we have a set of accelerators. We've now started building our funding platform, including our own fund. And there is more capital today in India than for supporting early stage clean tech startups than we could have imagined just 3 years back. We estimate about $2 billion going into climate tech startups over the next 18 months here in India. So we set up even a startup school because of this interest, especially from youth. Our startup school right now is focused on women in energy as well as women in circular economy. But there's interest all around here in India, not just in India, across Asia, Africa, exploring entrepreneurship. We work with the European Union Climate Kick program since 2017. It's the largest climate startup platform in the world. And we work with New Energy Nexus, which was set up by the state of California in 2004 to support clean energy startups. And now also in Asia and Africa, including India, we're also New Energy Nexus India. And there's a lot of other people we work with because of the interest today has really pivoted strongly towards climate. So I hope that I can share more the exciting stuff that I see. Maybe I'll just end with one last note. We have a youth challenge currently going on. It's with Wipro Foundation. It's called the Wipro Climate Challenge. It's part of our Climate Data Hackathon. And I believe there are many pockets like this where youth, especially in college, are interested in the climate space. In fact, we've done some research in the last year and a half in AI ML data. A third of the students surveyed were interested in impact. And that's amazing. I don't remember myself in college thinking about impact. I was thinking about getting a good job, high-paying job, standard kind of middle class kind of goal. So this is also not just something happening with climate, but the way that our youth think about the world going forward as well. Thank you.
Wow, brother, this is phenomenal. I think we wanted this ecosystem. Everyone wants this ecosystem, and everybody wants to have an access to the ecosystem. And I think you are trying to build all this together. And if this goes down to the last mile, especially to the Yuva and the youth of our nation, I think we have a lot to do. So thank you so much, and looking forward to knowing more about it in detail. Doing that. With that, may I request Pauline to please give your opening remarks? Thank
Sure.
you.
And it's always a pleasure to hear Pratap and his wonderful journey. Bouncing on what you just said, Pratap, I think what's happening now is that, especially for the youth now that is going to enter into the professional world very soon, getting a good job and working for climate is not a contradiction anymore. It can actually happen in the same job. You have a real boom, as you were saying, in terms of climate and impact careers. And now you can definitely find the sweet spot between having not only a good career, but also an impactful one. That reminds me of a term that most of you must have heard already, called ikigai. I'm not going to go into the depth of it today, but long story short, ikigai is this Japanese term that encourages you to try and maximize the energy that you wake up with in the morning, especially through your career and through the ambition and the work that you do on a daily basis. And it basically is about taking into account 4 factors when you think about your career. That is something that you like or you love doing, something that you're good at, something that you can be paid for, and something that the world needs. These 4 pivoting pillars are really essential when you think about your career and what you want to do later. And it's more and more possible today to have that impactful career that connects with what the world needs as well. So just super quickly, what I will share on my side is that I am the co-founder of an organization called WISE, which is based out of Kolkata, and now aggregates around 200 organizations focusing on the SDGs, or Sustainable Development Goals, which you can see on the bottom left corner of this slide. And one of the beliefs that we started with at WISE is that there are already so many great organizations and solutions in the ecosystem that just need to be better connected and get better exposure in order to get to scale, right? I'm not even going to share more than this. I just wanted to give you a couple of details about WISE. One of the key messages that I want to send to all of you who are watching today at this stage of the conversation is that climate careers and climate action is not going to happen to you randomly, right? You have to make it happen yourself. That is, depending on where you are in India or wherever you are in the world, get in touch with the people who are working in the field. I believe, Pratap, you're in Goa currently, or Climate Collective is in Goa, right? If I'm not mistaken. I'm in Kolkata. I was in Delhi yesterday. I met with wonderful organizations in the climate space. I'm in Bangalore today for an educational conference. I'm going to meet a lot more than that on top of this. So your local ecosystem is something that you need to get to know, and you need to meet people if you want climate action to happen to you in a way. You have to make it happen yourself with proactivity from your end. So not only can you start reaching out to professionals that have made it happen in the climate career space, and or there are so many educational social media contents right now on impact and climate that it's easy for you to get into that ecosystem, right? Follow the right people, follow the right organizations, and you'll get this boom of opportunities around you if you're really interested in it. My first comment, Shrinjay, for today.
Thank you so much, Pauline. Pauline, I think it's a very. I have a curious question here for myself.
Shrinjay, you are on mute. Please, everybody who's listening, it would be great if you can mindfully mute so that there's no background noises. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Pauline. Pauline, I have an interesting question for you. You rightly said that if you want to do something under climate change, and if you're passionate about it, do connect with your ecosystem around you. But at times what happens is not every city has their own ecosystems, and they operate in a different way. Now, as a layman who's in a different set of business, okay, or we want to do something, what is that one thing you would recommend to start thinking and building up that process of how can I make this impact? People always talk about one thing which is in front of us, which is plastic. But I think on a larger thought process, how can we enlighten ourselves? So if you could just give a heads up on that.
Sure. So I'll just break it down into 2 steps that I believe would be the best ones to start with. The first one is get acquainted with the theoretical and practical concepts of climate and overall the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. You can't show up to a person and say, oh, I'm interested in climate, and not understanding the basics of it. There are wonderful can be YouTube videos, can be the SDG Academy, who does a wonderful work. I'm sure maybe Pratap, you share resources maybe on your website on what is climate. And there are so many resources online that you can check out on yourself and just get up to speed with the climate ecosystem, with the impact ecosystem, so that you have a few elements to come with when you start conversations in the field. And then the second step that I would suggest is ecosystems are this magical thing that happens to you when you step into an ecosystem through only one person. Networks are built in such a way that if you get in touch with that one professional in the climate space, he or she will be able to open up much more relationships to you from there, right? So you get yourself known by one such person. For example, if you are in Kolkata and you get in touch with me, I can tell you about 200 more organizations in the WIST community that can help you further refine what you want to do with your climate abilities. In the same way, for each and every ecosystem, just find that one person who will open up for you the ecosystem bubble for climate and impact. I think in a nutshell, this is what I would suggest.
Brilliant. I think to all the you are in here in this room, this is the way we can start somewhere. I think this is a great heads up from Pauline. Thank you so much. Pratap, I would love to ask you this question. What are the opportunities for youth in the climate tech space that you envisage? If you can just elaborate much more in detail about this space, I think we would love to hear at length about this.
Right. So the climate tech space, of course, is only a subset of the wider we're referring to. the startups in particular in technology, and maybe like green as SMEs also start to green and separate that from corporates. They're fundamental. For example, of course, in the startup ecosystem more directly, as I mentioned, 2,500 startups. This number will be, we're estimating 4,000 by 2024. Some of these will continue to scale up. There will be jobs directly in the climate tech space. But if you look wider, the green SMEs, you're seeing supply chains trying to understand how to reduce energy. Waste is becoming a problem, especially for supply chains, etc. So I think there's quite a bit of opportunities numbers wise when it comes to sustainability in the next few years. And in fact, one of the key drivers we're going to see in this green transition is going to be led by SMEs. It's always a growth driver. Corporates, of course, it's always great, but they may be in the same when it comes to jobs. So in terms of opportunity, it's pretty straightforward. I mean, a startup is a startup. That does not mean you should do a startup. In fact, I always recommend that someone tries internships first. You learn so much more being in the right environment. And I double what Pauline said about climate is not going to come to you, at least today. You have to go and get climate. And in fact, I'll give you one example is we get a lot of people who apply to Climate Collective, since now there's some interest in the climate space. And we were looking for a community manager. And we got hundreds of resumes. And then one person, not from the climate space, studied what we did, put a community plan together, presented it, and gave recommendations what we should do. I didn't like most of it, but I was super impressed. And this is something, for example, just to double on that, is that we if you are interested in this space, it's up to you. The learnings that Pauline had mentioned, that should be straightforward. You don't have to become an expert. That's not the goal. You have to show interest and start to show evidence or evidence of wanting to be in this space as opposed to a fad. Now, a lot of youth, when they look at climate, it may be too new. And these are hard choices. Should I go into a nascent space, want a traditional finance or corporate job? Should I? And and I can understand that as well. Internships, especially if you're still in university, that could be a very good way to get some exposure. There's always a risk, but I do know, and I think we've all seen something is happening on the ground, not in the wider climate space. The Big Four announcing some lacks of ESG jobs of interest to hire here. Whether those turn out to be lacks or not, they will be big because we can see fundamental shifts in where corporate India and the corporate world generally is moving. So I think to answer your question, what are the opportunities? They're quite varied, for sure. And it's hard to find too many mentors with this experience. For example, if in the climate tech space, who has had a climate tech startup more than a decade? Not too many here in India. So there is a level of risk. It requires kind of trial and error, taking risks in internships. I do believe just learning is by far the most powerful way at this stage if you're a youth looking at this space.
Just one thing, Shrinjay, that I would like to add, bouncing on what Pratap said, is that when we talk about climate, actually we talk about many different things. Climate is an umbrella of jobs and opportunities that you can consider, because climate change has so many causes and consequences that the scope of the space and sector itself is much broader than just the academic climate topic as we understand it. So for example, Pratap, you mentioned earlier areas of waste management, for example. It's a huge field, but obviously it's connected to climate to a great extent, because not only, of course, our landfills are contributing to emissions, as well as, of course, the waste that we generate is directly related to the ways in which we produce and we consume, and therefore feeding into climate change, right? So one has to understand, and I'll come to that a little later, maybe in the talk, that the opportunities that you have in the space are much broader than you think, and they need to be mapped with who you are, what you care the most about, and what your skills are. I think is something worth mentioning.
So, Pauline, I mean, now that you have mentioned it, on the educational front, do you see, there could be a long-lasting impact by creating the kind of specialized courses or the universities that can create skill development under climate change? And are we gearing up for the future? Because I think, as we always fear what future looks like, and I think we want to work towards it. Are we working on it on ground? And for you, I mean, why does the youth matter? Pauline, if you could just elaborate this. I mean, both sets of questions, education and why youth matters when it comes to the climate change.
Yeah, I'll tell you why youth matter and why and how it connects to education. Youth matters because it's very difficult to change a mindset of a 60-year-old, right? And in the space of education, I've always believed that issues like sustainable development or climate should be inculcated at as much of a young age as possible, right? Like from 2 or 3 years old, you should have notions of social and environmental responsibility onwards. And this is also why personally I'm mostly interested, and I stepped professionally into the space of education. It is because of that power that you have to shape up young minds, right? On that SDG number 4, especially, which is quality education. And so I really believe that it's youth matters because youth have the power to bring about a new mindset that we deadly need, deadly being very consciously used here, deadly need in order to raise awareness and create more and more climate jobs. As a matter of fact, education is mapped to the industry to a great extent. That is, educational institute, especially in countries like India, have to come up more easily with educational programs.
One second, Pauline.
It's okay. I muted the person. If you have jobs beyond, right? We just to share a little failure from my end from a couple of years ago. We wanted to start an MBA in sustainability at Techno India. Because I'm deeply convinced that there are climate and impact careers behind it, but you still have to make the point and map the jobs that are behind it in order for the demand to actually show up for such a program. And it was just before the pandemic, so obviously not the right time. And also in terms of marketing, a very tough sell still 3 years ago to say that that climate and impact careers could actually be good jobs in the way that we traditionally understand good jobs, that is very well paid and so numerous in the market, have a zero risk kind of undertaking when you take on these particular educational programs at the bachelor's and master's level. Now, as Pratap was saying, and we are about to reiterate the experience, as Pratap was saying, the sector is booming so much that we see an exponential growth in this career, and therefore it becomes easier for educational institutes to also map their program with industry needs as far as these jobs are concerned. And so we are hoping that the next academic year will be very happening in that sense from our end. Just one last comment here. Youth matters also, especially in India, because 50% of the population is under 25 years old, and you know the young generation today is facing unprecedented challenges that the older generations may not be able to comprehend, right? We talk about eco-anxiety very much, for example. That is, we are in presence of a generation that was born with the fear, an environmental fear of sometimes almost apocalyptic of the kind of future perspective that we can have on our own planet, right? These older generations are not very well equipped to understand this particular mindset and this specific collective fear, because they're less concerned by the young generations who are going to live on this planet and who are going to pursue younger generations and younger generations after that, right? Sustainability at its core is about thinking long term. It's about thinking about generations that don't exist yet. And I think the young generation is very well positioned to better understand that and what is at stake.
Brilliant. And I think, Pratap, that leads me to a question to you. I mean, Pauline talks about education system and how they are transforming it and how they are preparing for the future. While we do that, and I think it's also very critical when you talk about startup ecosystems. And you have witnessed yourself. In fact, you have gone ahead and invested a lot of your time and have created resources for those startups. Can you just elaborate, or can you give us more understanding about this ecosystem of startups? And today, the kind of technologies you are witnessing, the kind of innovations you are witnessing, and the kind of investments, the money which are flowing into the ecosystem. Please. Yeah. So, Pratap, if you
Right.
can give us more insight on this startup ecosystem and the kind of funds which are flowing in, and what kind of technologies and innovation that you are, yourself witnessing it for the first time.
Right. No, it's great, and I have had the privilege of seeing it up front from where it started in 7 years back. Lots of energy startups, in particular, maybe because it was easier to think about energy in India, with the National Solar Mission, 5 years old and growing. Today, it's quite diverse. Our biggest startups actually now have moved into circular economy, especially plastic waste. I think we literally 12% or 13% of our startups are just in plastic waste. We're talking about reuse solutions, of course, bioplastic, data, some recycling, sorting, etc. We're seeing a lot of other stuff around sustainable consumption, e-commerce platforms. Someone selling eco-furnishings specifically to a new audience. This requires new sales channels or sales and marketing channels. You can't put a sustainability product in a generic platform, for example, like an Amazon. It does not scream sustainability when you're searching there for price. So people are designing new ways of engaging consumers in these new sustainable products. But it goes even deeper. I mean, we're seeing climate and risk solutions. This is like, for example, how do you measure not just disaster response, landslide risk, et cetera, but also how do you measure the impact on financial institutions, loan portfolios, et cetera. That's quite exciting. New areas now finally are coming up around regenerative finance, which means, for example, can you tap, as an example, sustainability credits like voluntary carbon markets, now plastic credits, et cetera, to support sustainability goals, going beyond the framework set up in the past. The UNFCCC had this carbon market program 15 years ago under Kyoto. Now we're seeing a lot of innovation. How do you connect to people who may not just be a top 50 global MNC? There's a lot of interest in supporting sustainability projects locally, which requires a lot more innovation to reach them. So that's something that's quite exciting that we expect as well. So I think normally what we see is that first you start with EVs all around the world. This in India is no different. EVs and maybe agri-tech, in particular climate-friendly agriculture, because they are easy use cases. Now we're seeing it deepen. Now we're seeing more water solutions coming up, and that's not easy, straightforward. Most of the water solutions coming on this startup space, of course, are not for the government, but for industry, where the use case is stronger. So you can see the flavor of the startup ecosystem is really about business and consumer value rather than funding. Because we've always had grants in many areas of sustainability, but the challenge with grants without a continuing sustainable model is once the funding reduces, what happens there. And one of the mottos or themes of the climate tech startup ecosystem is impact comes from scale. Not the projects you do, but the ability to seed something that could have a sustainable model, consumer or business value. In my coaching, one of the questions I sometimes ask is, what is the biggest circular economy startup we have in the world? Whether it is or not, it's very...
we, Pratap,
Uber. I mean, if you think about Uber, what is it about Uber? They take an existing stock, reutilize it, increase its utilization for to reduce the amount of cars that are produced. That's as circular as you get. But nobody says, I want this circular economy solution from Uber. I want a taxi. So this is where, for example, a lot of the climate tech space, even though the impact is climate, it creates a business value or a consumer value that people want today. And often it correlates well with sustainability goals. So that's quite exciting to see.
Pratap, I have a question. You have seen a lot of work being done on ground, but how have you seen traction from the young India towards this technology front, or has it come from somebody who has already got a very established business and then they're coming into the climate change, or now no, youth is participating right in front and they want to make this happen? Do you see that?
Well, yeah, what we see generally in India in the startup ecosystem is a very young, youthful startup ecosystem, generally, not just in climate, whether good or bad. I mean, youth actually do struggle in this space. All startups, youth, don't have as much experience, etc. What they do have is risk taking. What they do have is they can think differently, right? Whether they need a little more time than maybe someone with 20 years experience, or whether they need to do a few startups to get that experience. In fact, an old adage in Silicon Valley was, if you want to be an entrepreneur, you have to go be at bat 6 times. And this is where, for example, we can tap the talents of youth, because as Pauline was saying, it's sometimes hard to change people's minds, 60 or older, etc. You don't see opportunities. And there's an old Upton Sinclair saying is that you can't convince someone of an opinion if his job depends on him thinking the other way. And that's a fundamental problem when it comes to innovation in existing corporates or organizations. That's where the role where youth can come in. They're not encumbered by that same problem. This is how it should be. And it comes from sustainability values. When you have the right values, you see opportunities rather than scary change. So youth are participating. It is a challenge, but that's true for all entrepreneurship startup ecosystem for youth. But I believe that now that I think about 20 years, almost 20 years in the startup ecosystem here in India, we're seeing talent develop and mature. Everyone was quite young 20 years ago. We're seeing more talent coming in from other startup ecosystems in the climate space. So we're seeing a deepening there as well. All these are positive. And it's opening up more opportunities for youth, today's youth, to even join as interns or analysts. In fact, we do have a platform called Climate Jobs Fair that we've been running for a year, and now it's a full-time board in partnership with Climate Asia that is trying to get more internships and jobs for youth into the startup ecosystem. Nothing like seeing what it is before deciding if it's for you.
Brilliant. I think this is very important. I think youth and the risk taking, I think it's very essential. We always knew being an entrepreneur, you need to take a risk. But if the young minds come along and they are trying to disrupt the entire thought process, this is where we need the next tower. So with that, Pauline, from where Pratap just spoke about risk taking, entrepreneurship, young minds coming together. Now, this is where a critical question comes to you, the foundation, right, of the thought process, taking up from there on and believing that we need to make that change. How do we imbibe this among the youth, and how can we work together? Not only, and I said youth is not only about currently the Yuva, but all of us, whoever wants to do that one bit of change. How are we getting ready for it, Pauline?
Yeah, thank you for this. Before I go exactly into that question, I wanted to bounce on what Pratap was mentioning on the question, are we seeing the youth taking action? Just a couple of days ago, my bad, Let me just share it on the chat. A couple of days ago, I met with Ayantika. She is just 20 and she's the co-founder of Climate B Ventures based in Bhubaneswar and across India. They have a remote team. They're doing risk assessment and mitigation for infrastructure businesses, which I think is great. It's just one example of just a 20-year-old, very mature with her thoughts. I can tell you, we were really like-minded in our first conversation that we had a couple of days ago. It was really inspiring for me to see that as early as 20 years old, she went back a long way in her sustainability journey. Of course, there are young people that are already super active in the space. As I'm just sharing that, I'm also going to share a couple of other structures that have been really inspired by recently, with whom you can take action right away. Pratap, I would love to know if you know them. There's one that I will, so of course there is, in terms of especially climate education and climate jobs, you have an organization called Teradu, very famous around the world, from the US, but in India, very active as well. You can go and check them out. They also have job fairs. It's very well structured as a community. You can go check. Another one is that I met also a couple of days ago. I met the co-founder. Anirudh in Delhi. He is the co-founder of Climbs. Climbs is basically just an add-on to your browser. When you shop online, say you buy a flight from Delhi to Bangalore, you can, at the checkout, you can actually contribute a certain amount of money to offset the carbon emissions that you're generating through this purchase. And this will come and fund carbon offsetting programs. So you can also very directly as a consumer and very easily engage with such technologies. And one last, can you please mute yourselves? One last, but not the least, I've been very inspired by that. Pratap, just check them out if you don't know them. They're based out of France, very proud of this. They're called Time for the Planet. And what Time for the Planet does is collective crowdfunding for climate solutions. Actually, Pratap, if you want your climate startups to maybe, submit your climate solutions and get funding from this organization, they can definitely do that. The way they work is, you're a citizen, no matter where you are in the world. They propose that you become a shareholder. Can you please mute yourself? It's very tiring. Thank you so much. They propose that as a citizen, as an individual, you become shareholder of Time for the Planet. Each and every share is only €1 worth. 70, 80 rupees. Yes. So you can buy one share, you can buy 100 shares, you can buy 1,000 shares, whatever you want, whatever is your budget. And this contribution goes to a collective pot that goes and fund climate solutions. They have a brilliant financial mechanism to do that. And they also use collective intelligence to evaluate and choose the climate projects and ventures that they end up funding. I became a shareholder of this in a couple of clicks a few weeks ago, and I've been really amazed by the way they engage their community. I think for now, it's a relatively recent initiative, just a couple of years old, and they already have around 70,000 shareholders, and they have raised millions of euros, millions of dollars through that, just crowdfunding through shareholding. So these are just a few examples. Now, coming back to your question, Shrinjay, the way you can make it happen, I really believe that you also need to make it happen internally. That is, checking in with yourself, as I was telling you earlier. Start learning about what climate means, what sustainable development means, and so on. I'm going to share a few slides with you very quickly. I'm not going to go into the details of it because I'll share a link with you where you can find the whole recap. You know this framework already. It's the 17 SDGs, right? that is basically a list of 17 rules that we need to individually and collectively pursue in order to become more sustainable as a society and planet overall. Now, starting from this framework, I realized that it was hardly actionable, right? It's not because you say, Pratap, I'm telling you, no poverty, that you're going to be able to take action from it. It's very broad, it's very vague. And at the individual level, especially, it's very hard to take action and to understand how to take action from there. And so we started thinking of a tool. Think about it as a career orientation tool, where the SDGs is invite you to think about the top 1 or 2 causes that you deeply care about, right? And that depends only on you. There's no wrong or right answer here, right? Pratap, you may be focused on climate action, but I'm more focused on quality education. Maybe as an individual, all of you will have more of a focus on number 5, gender equality, or number 12, responsible consumption and production. That's the first question you should ask yourself. What do you really care about personally? Knowing that you cannot do it all. You have to choose a focus in order to be efficient to a great extent at what you do. And that is a tough call, I know, but you have to go inside and check yourself out and see within yourself, what is it that I care the most about? And then you can couple this with another framework that we came up with, which is called the Sustainable Development Fields, which is basically a list of 17 fields that it's a list of industries where you can actually take action, right? So from agriculture, fishery, and F&B to FMCG to textile and fashion and so on. Interestingly here, all industries are unsustainable to a certain extent. Yes, so if I take textile and fashion, if you're interested in textile and fashion, you go check the trend of fast fashion, you go check what happened to the Rana Plaza collapse in Bangladesh back in 2013, I think, where 3,000 victims were claimed because there was a whole building that collapsed. And this building happened to be a sweatshop used by all of the fast fashion brands in the Western world that did not care enough about working conditions behind their industries to stop that from happening. Each and every such industry is unsustainable to a certain extent, right? So here again, on this framework, you think, what are the top 2 sectors that I'm mostly interested in? Right? So maybe if you're starting to getting to know yourself a little more. If you are interested in, say, quality education and the textile and fashion space, then maybe one lead for you to explore is to learn more about what's happening in the fashion industry and to check what are the educational programs that are available towards sustainable fashion. It's just an example. And then the last framework that you can couple all of this with is the enablers. This is again a list of 17 enablers, 17 tools that you may use in order to create the change at the industries that you've shortlisted, working on the causes that you've shortlisted before. So myself, for example, I would position myself on SDE 7, citizen and community movements. WIST is a 200 organization or aggregating platform. I'm really interested in community as a lever of change. I deeply care about education and skills development as a sector and quality education as a goal. So SDGs happen to be your why, SDF happen to be your where, and SDEs happen to be your how. If you want to explore that framework further, everything is explained here. And you can go and check and find your own personal combination yourself, right? So go inside yourself and think about things that you care about, because you won't be able to do it all. I think I'll finish there. You're on mute, Shrinjay, I think.
Okay, I think I was muted. Anyways, so it's brilliant, Pauline. I think those sheets that you have just shared, the PDF, I think it's going to be very, very important for all of us to understand more in detail. We have about 7 more minutes, but Pratap, before I go there, I think about a minute. Let's not let's talk about climate change policies, which has been framed by the government to support the youth. How would you like to talk about it, and how can we align to it? Because I believe there are a lot of subsidies, a lot of opportunities, a lot of funding ecosystem. What would you suggest? How can we align with that?
Right. I'm not sure how much funding there is for a country our size, but there is definitely some funding. And I really have only any experience in the startup ecosystem, and I do talk to the state nodal agencies about like how to engage youth more. And I can share a interesting conversation from a few years ago. I mean, 3 years ago. They had a program to give 5 lakhs to each graduate who was unemployed to do a startup, right? So it's a way to kind of get some experience, build some product development, and see if they can build some entrepreneurial skills along the way and innovation skills. My own experience that most of that money would be relatively wasted. It's when you're 22, none of us will give 5 lakhs to most youth, not because of anything else. Let's be very honest about this, but there's still a way to leverage that same capital for that funding for youth. So I propose, why not get them into climate startups? I mean, and fund them as an intern for a year, 2 years, something like this. I think sometimes we jump the gun, at least in our space, about how many startups we should have, and especially with youth, right? We have a ton of funding for a lot of these programs. I'm not sure how effective they are, very bluntly, but I do believe that what we need is what Pauline was saying earlier is we need youth to be engaged because of their freshness, ideas, unencumbered thinking. We also are talking about a transformation. It's not just a few startups here or a few corporates leading the way, but every organization that is being impacted by sustainability in some way or risk in some way needs to have people who can say, let's try something. So there is kind of a skilling and a education that's needed broader than, for example, startups. So what I would say is getting more people the skills as a youth, whether it's going to be for a startup ecosystem, whether they're going to join corporate or a nonprofit, or maybe something else in the future.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Pratap, and thank you so much, Paula. And I think we have had a brilliant conversation. I think to start our climate action week with having the two of you on to talk about youth and the climate change has been very, very helpful and very deep understanding. We shall be and we will be more in touch with you. How can we collaborate together and creating larger impact on ground through our network of our Yuva to Tralir to our vertical of climate change? We may not be an expert, but if we all come together and collaborate, maybe we can see a hope and silver line ahead that we can change the way the world impacts. So I think I would really, from the bottom of our heart and from the entire VIA community, we thank you. And before we move ahead, would you like to quickly say hello to our members and give 30 seconds thought process, please? Pauline?
Sure. Hello, everybody. In the 30 seconds that I have, I would mention one more resource that you can check out. It's called the Inner Development Goals. It's a list of 23 personal characters and characterial qualities that you should aim at developing in order for you to become more apt to bring change towards SDGs. So inner development goals include collaborative thinking, include creativity, include curiosity, include empathy, and so on and so forth. It's really about that journey of also you yourself as a consumer, as a citizen, even beyond thinking of a career. Are you able to embrace maybe a more sober and a more sustainable lifestyle? So
thank you so much, Pauline. Appreciate that. Pratap, with that, would you like to end?
Right. Well, I love to see these kind of platforms because we need them. There's so much engagement we need. It's such a big challenge and it's such a big country. So I want to add. I'll only add with a line that I finish with often in talks. It's from a U.S. President Abraham Lincoln. The best way to predict the future is to create it. So I hope we take this positive action
Brilliant.
and create the world we want.
Brilliant. 1 second. Thank you so much, everyone. I think I would like to appreciate all the UA colleges who have joined today, Shim and a lot of members and a lot of UA. So with that, UA, if you're hearing this, let's work together. Let's create the impact that you've been envisaging. Thank you so much for all joining in. Thank you, Paula and thank you, Pratap, once again.